So welcome all, I'm Dwight Mahalitz, the President of Effective Managers, and welcome to this webinar, The Effective CEO, 6 Key Functions That Effective CEOs Get Right. I always like to start, those of you that are returnees to the webinar, to start with a question. And I think the question for this one is, what do effective CEOs get right? And in order to answer that question, I need to talk a little bit about the organization as a system, because the CEO, in fact, is accountable for an entire system. I'll then talk about the 6 key functions that a CEO needs to focus in on, and then we'll have a few slides to wrap up the session at the end. So in terms of the system, if we think about the green triangle in the middle, that's the organization. And the purpose of an organization is to add value. So it's receiving input, as you see on the left of the screen. That input comes from the environment and the environment in which the organization exists. And the purpose of that organization is to take that input, add value, and create output, which has greater value than the combined aspects of all of the input. So in terms of thinking about the CEO is the single position that has accountability for that entire system. Sometimes the CEO may be an owner, sometimes the CEO may be reporting to a board who has the overall accountability with respect to stakeholders. But in thinking about paid positions, individuals that are accountable for the system, really the CEO is at the top of that system. And one client I was talking to actually represented the CEO as the system, and I think that's fair in some ways. I'm using a build on this slide, so hopefully it will work. I know there's a bit of a delay sometimes in the webinar broadcast, so if there is, send me a text message and I will just bring it all up. So if we think about that system, then what makes that system operate? What is it that creates that additional value? If you're thinking about it from the perspective of a consumer, really you don't care what's inside that black box. All you're interested in is the service or the product that you want to obtain from the organization. On the other hand, if you're inside the organization, and particularly if you're the CEO, then you need to be aware of what drives the organizational systems and what can create that added value. So the first thing we need to think about is the organizational strategy. So what is the mission, vision, values, the strategic positioning? So where is it that we want to take this organization over time? The second aspect of systems are those systems that are within the organization. So I guess one might think of those as subsystems then. So what are the number of layers that we have in the organization? How many functions should we have in the organization? What are the business systems that we need to have in place? What are the business processes for how work flows across the organization? The other dynamic, the third dynamic, which is a critical one, are the people. So who are the people in the organization, and how do people, your human resources, your workforce, how do they work across and through these systems in order to deliver that strategy over time so that they're creating this output, which is the added value for the organization as a whole. So it is that combination then of the people who are doing the sort of finding the right people, getting them in the right place, doing the right thing. So it's that combination of those people working across the organization that create the output. And the only individual in the organization that has oversight of all 3 of these subsystems is the CEO, because it's the CEO that is accountable for executing the strategy. It's the CEO that's accountable for those systems. That's the CEO at the end of the day that is accountable for the people in the organization as well. So it's a different way of looking at the system, but what it does is emphasize the unique and critical role of the CEO. And in fact, I have a paper that is available on my website called The Unique and Critical Role of the CEO, which gets into this in more detail. So I don't want to bore you with systems theory, but I did want to give you that insight into the importance of that role and why it's critically important, because no one individual in the organization can have that perspective. And that perspective really does come back down to the strategy, and this number, which I've seen over and over again in a number of different situations, that 70% of strategies fail to achieve desired results. So the question is, why is that? If most organizations are good at developing strategies, and they are, and yet most organizations fail to achieve strategies, it would seem to me that there's something systemic going amiss. There's some reason why individuals are not able to individuals in the name of CEOs are not able to achieve their strategies, because it's absolutely not from not trying hard enough. So CEOs do work hard to do that. So so it's not that CEOs or any individuals in the organization are not doing one thing right, because if it were, it would be easy for that to be corrected. So it's a number of things that come together that are not getting the right attention in the right weighting, so we're not having the right balance. And this is exactly what I'm going to go on to talk about now for the rest of this webinar, is talking about those 6 key functions of a CEO. So the 6 key functions are on this slide. It's slide number 8 in the package that I sent out to you. Well, actually, it would be slide number 6 in the package I sent out to you. And these are the 6 functions: manage, ensure work is appropriately delegated, and so on. You can read these. So what I'll do now quickly is walk through each one of these 6. So so the first one is manage. And many people would think, well, of course, one needs to manage, but the issue is that in many situations, the higher in the organization an individual is, the more they tend to believe that since they are accountable for senior people as their subordinates, that their requirement to manage is not as high. So they say, you know, the kind of the thinking is, I've got senior level people, they know their business, they know their jobs, so I don't need to manage them, they can be self-managed. But the issue is that especially from the perspective of the CEO, but this is true for every manager in the organization, unless you attend to these managerial tasks, which I've listed here on this slide, then the risk is that as individuals go about executing strategy, drift is built into the organization. So for instance, plan here at the first level is that the CEO needs to plan. The CEO's plan is in fact the strategic plan for the organization. Then as one moves down the organization, each manager should have a plan that they are accountable for implementing that is a subset of the plan of their manager, which links all the way back up to the strategic plan of the organization. And the only way that can happen in a coordinated way where everyone is pulling the organization in the same direction is if managers do their job of managing. So from the CEO perspective, sitting down with the team, walking through the strategy, ensuring that each one of them is aware of what they are accountable for within their area, how all of those roll up into those things that the CEO needs to have done for the organization as a whole, and so on. The CEO then needs to understand and carry out their own value-added work. So what are those things that only the CEO in that position with the capability that they have are able to do? They need to set context and boundaries for their team and for each individual in the team in terms of that work that they're accountable for, those things that they need to attend to, the time frame within which they need to do their work, and so on. And then it's only at that point that you actually delegate the specific things that individuals will be accountable for achieving within a certain time frame and within certain resources and to a certain level of quality and quantity. And then finally, these feedback loops are critically important. Instead of managing, monitoring, overseeing, giving feedback, coaching, and so on. So this is all summarized in a table which shows you a figure which shows you the 5 requirements of an effective manager. Just not too long ago, I did a webinar entirely on this, so I'm not going to go into this any further. But there is a paper on the website you can download, and there is a webinar which will be posted shortly. It hasn't been posted yet, but will soon be available for viewing. The second key function is ensuring that work is appropriately delegated down the organization. So this ties into the aspect that I mentioned in the last slide around planning. So if part of our managerial work is planning, The CEO needs to plan, we know that, but the CEO also needs to ensure that each individual manager has a plan that is relevant to their department, and the CEO needs to ensure that there is an accountability and authority framework so that each manager down the entire organization is aware of and is delegated clearly and crisply those things that they're accountable for delivering and the context within which they will do their work. If that does not happen, it comes down to vector science. You don't usually talk about physics in managerial sciences, but in vector you say if two things are pulling in the same direction, then you add their force together. If two things are going in opposite directions, you get a lot of heat and a lot of noise, but there's no movement because they cancel out, the two forces cancel each other out. So if in an organization, everyone in the organization isn't using their energy and their talents and their resources to pull their organization in exactly the same direction, they will start to be working at counter purposes. I call that churn in the organization because they're not working in a coordinated and concerted way. So the CEO ensuring that this framework is in place for this delegation of work down the organization is really important, ensuring that that people are coordinating and combining their efforts in a useful way. So I've kind of picked the bottom three layers of the organization here to give you a sense of that. So if I'm a director, I've been delegated work by my vice president. I need to decide, as I talked earlier in the 5 requirements, I need to decide what my value-added work as delegated to me from my vice president, and I do that value-added work. Now, some of that work that has been delegated to me only I can do, so I need to do that work, but some of it I can chunk up and delegate further down the organization for someone lower in the organization to actually do parts of that work. Some of it may be input to work that I need to do, but some of it may be value-added work that the manager in this case would be doing on their own. So that cycle repeats itself. The manager has been delegated work from the director. They do their value-added work. They're clear about what they're accountable for. They're clear about their priorities. So they're empowered. This is the appropriate use of empowerment. They're empowered to do the work, to take initiatives, to solve problems, to initiate activities that are consistent with that work that has been delegated to them by their manager. And then similarly, the manager would repeat that cycle in terms of delegating work to the front line, which would do their value-added work. In the absence of this clarity of accountability and authority, we run into the situation which we see today. We just completed our research with the University of Ottawa, and the findings are astoundingly to me that managers are only spending 55% of their time on what we would call value-added work. So in fact, they're spending almost half of their time caught up in the churn of the organization, doing work, duplicating work, attending meetings they don't have to attend, standing at a photocopier because they don't have an admin assistant to support them in their work. So there's huge potential here to get this accountability and authority framework properly in place in the organization. So if we think then about the model, this is based on our proprietary approach to accountability called the effective point of accountability. So the effective point of accountability is that lowest point in the organization, which is a single point of accountability where the individual has the skills and the capability to be able to do the work. So I've given you this slide. It may be a bit hard to see on the screen, but you will be able to see it in the handout that I sent around. So the effective point of accountability in this example is profit for the organization. So the board sets the targets as part of the strategy. The CEO is then accountable for achieving the bottom line. So the effective point of accountability, I'll refer to this as the EPA from now on. So the EPA for the bottom line is the CEO, because there's no other individual anywhere in the organization that can be held accountable for that, because the bottom line is sales, it's operations, it's production, it's delivery, it's all of those things together. If we go down to the next level where we think about sales only, the CEO can hold the VP of sales accountable for overall sales targets. So the effective point of accountability for sales target is that. There would be an effective point of accountability for operations and so on, which cascade up or consolidate up into achieving the bottom line and so on. We're limited in time, so I can't dive into this too deeply. We did do a webinar on the effective point of accountability, and there is a paper available on the web for that. So the third area is ensuring that there's an accountability and authority framework for how work flows across the organization. So it's one thing to be clear about delegating work down the organization. It's an entirely other thing to be sure clear about how work flows across the organization. In today's organizations, there is greater independence than ever before. So with the increasing specialization, particularly in larger organizations, there is greater interdependence. So for me to be successful in the work that I need to do, I am relying on someone in another part of the organization to do their work well and to deliver it within agreed parameters so that I can be successful in my work. So it's critically important that if I am in a situation where I have interdependence with others, that I be clear about what my accountability and authority is with respect to them and with respect to the work that I do. Because if I don't have that, then there is churn in the organization again because of this miscommunication and misunderstanding about who does what when. This is often thought of as the silo effect. There's a lack, if there's a lack of clarity of accountability and authority for how work flows across the organization, there will be a tendency to build silos in the organization to be in control of everything that I need for success in my job because I can't trust others in other parts of the organization to deliver it. So that results in duplication of effort, which detracts from the effective performance of the organization. So this is the effective point of accountability, and I put this slide up to make one point. If you recall, I said that the effective point of accountability is the lowest point in the organization where there can be a single point of accountability that the person has the capability and the skills to be able to do the work. For work that flows across the organization, that effective point of accountability is much higher than most people believe it is. And this is one of the reasons that this often goes off track. So this example here is the budget process. So in this situation, the CFO is delegated from the CEO the accountability for developing, implementing, monitoring, supporting, providing training on, and all of those things for the budget process. But if there's a disagreement, say between development and finance in terms of the timing of submission of budget materials or the amount of budget to be submitted or whatever, the CFO can work with that individual to try to help them understand what the context is they have from the CEO. But at the end of the day, the CFO cannot decide or direct the work of the person that's in charge of business development. Only the CEO is able to do that. So by that definition, and bearing that in mind, it's only the CEO that has the authority to decide and direct with regard to the budget process. So I'm not saying that the CEO has to manage the budget process. Absolutely, the CFO should be accountable for that. In fact, most parts of it would be delegated even lower in the organization. But at the end of the day, the CEO needs to understand his or her accountability for ensuring that that budget process is in place and that it works smoothly. The second example here is that gathering and consolidating the budget information might be delegated to the Director of Finance. And again, the Director of Finance would do most of the work with regard to that process. But if there is a major disagreement between two departments, the two VPs might try to work out the differences. But if they can't, the only one that can decide and direct is the CEO. So the point here for functions 2 and 3 in terms of how work flows down the organization and how work flows across the organization is that the EPA rests with the position that can decide, so resolve issues, decide on the process, decide the importance of the process, whether we even need the process, etc., and direct. In other words, direct people delegation and instructing them what it is that they need to do to resolve that situation. So by definition, any process that goes across the organization, the EPA rests with the CEO. If it goes across a department or a function, then the EPA rests with the head of that department or function. So a closing thought on accountability, because it is critically important, and in our research we see this as the #1 driver in terms of managers being ineffective, is that clarity of accountability will lead to clarity of action. So if I'm clear about my accountability, I will be clear about how to set my priorities and how to take initiatives, make decisions, solve problems that are consistent with the work that I need to do. And it also leads to clarity of interaction. So how work flows across the organization and how I interact with others in other parts of the organization. So the fourth function, time is just flying by here, so we'll step this up a little bit. So the fourth function is implementing the right organization design, and this is really all about complexity of work. So in the figure here, I'm showing you that as individuals are higher in the organization, the complexity of work that they are accountable for increases. So if I'm a frontline worker, I'll come in, I'll do my work. It's assigned to me during the day. At the end of the day, when I'm finished my work, I'm finished for the day, and that's it. However, if I'm a vice president, I might be accountable for, I don't know, building a new plant in another part of the world, or launching operations in a new region, which might take 2, 3, or 4 or 5 years to successfully implement. So the CEO would delegate to me accountability for doing that and delivering it, let's say in 3 years. I would be then accountable for carrying that work forward, delegating parts of it, coordinating the work that I've delegated, but always keeping my eye on the ball 3 years out to make sure that we can meet that timeline, because undoubtedly other parts of the 5 or 10 year strategy of the CEO depends on me delivering that strategic objective in those 3 years. So that is much more complex work. So in organization design, the key is understanding in your organization the complexity of work and aligning the layers of your organization to that complexity. That brings us then to the fifth, which is closely related to the fourth. Once you have the organization design in place and the correct number of layers with the complexity of work aligned, it's important then to have a talent management system in place to ensure that individuals with the right level of problem-solving capability, Elliot Jacks calls it mental processing capability, other researchers call it other things. I've settled on problem-solving capability because I think of the problem as the attainment of that objective over that period of time. But as an individual in a vice president role is accountable for more complex work, to be successful in that work, they must have the capability to be able to work at that level. One of the biggest failings in current talent management systems is that the individual that is the most successful at the subordinate level is often the one that is promoted to the manager level when there's a vacancy. And in fact, because they're the most successful at that level, it might be because they're ideally suited for that level of or complexity of work at that level, and promoting them actually brings into play the Peter principle. They're promoted above their level of capability and can't be successful in that role. And then 6 is establish and manage appropriate support systems. Support systems have 2 key functions in organization. One function is ensuring that there are appropriate systems in place for the CEO to understand the state of the nation. So how are we doing in finance? How are we doing in HR and so on? But the other part of it is to provide support and services to managers in their work. And again, in this area, our research shows that managers, by and large, and by a large margin, do not feel supported by their support systems. So the temptation by the CEO to believe that CFO is accountable for all of the finance systems, HR is accountable for all of the HR systems, can lead to to a situation where these interdepartmental, interorganizational systems improvement aspects are not being attended to appropriately, because only the CEO can judge the balance between each of these support systems in terms of how much is invested in each of them, but also within each of them how much is invested in supporting the organization in the work that needs to be done upwards, but also supporting the organization in terms of supporting the managers in the work that they need to do. So certainly the CFO is delegated the work for finance, and the HR is delegated the work for human resources, but the CEO needs to understand their accountability for ensuring that those support system organizations are appropriately strategically positioned to develop and to deliver against the overall strategy of the organization. So it's that higher level oversight of all of the functions, how they all tie together, and ensuring that we have the right balance is critically important and often ignored by CEOs. So just quickly to talk about the situation today. For success in any system in the organizations, managers need to be able to focus in on their value-added work. I've preempted this slide already. I talked about it a little bit earlier in one of the other slides, but managers are only spending 55% of their time doing value-added work. So do look at some information on my website about the survey that we have recently implemented, because it's the best tool I know of, in fact the only tool that I'm aware of that can measure the effectiveness of managers within organizations, and to give some insights into each of these areas that we just talked about. You know, how effective are managers, how clear are they about their accountability and authority, and what are the major factors that are getting in the way of them being as effective as they can. And now a quick word from our sponsor. Here's the survey slide. I just talked about that. I hadn't realized that I'd put this one in. So the manager effectiveness survey is available, and please do check out more information on this on our website. So now the word from our sponsor. Upcoming webinars. The one we're doing 2 weeks from now is the top 12 business fallacies in 2 minutes each. So this will be a challenge for me to try to get all of those in, but I'm looking forward to doing my best. It'll be a very interesting webinar, and I would invite you to join me. 1 week after that, this is a special edition webinar I've got Wednesday, December 16th, but it's in fact Tuesday, December 16th. Sorry about that. It is special edition, and it will be on the Tuesday instead of the Wednesday. And it's a change management seminar, because at this time of year is when most executives are thinking about the work that they need to do in the coming years. So please do log on for that one. So in closing, feel free to check out my website. There are articles there that are available for you to download and to have a look at. This one is the 6 key functions of the CEO. So I in fact have 7 articles on the website on this one, and I also have on the resources tab a PDF version of this, which is available for free download. So that will give you a lot more information along the lines of what we just discussed now. If you'd like to join me for our webinars, I've talked about that already. You can log on for a free subscription to our newsletter, follow me on Twitter for daily management tips, or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to stay in touch with you on LinkedIn. So that brings the formal webinar to a close, just barely under the 30 minutes. So thank you very much for your attention. I really do appreciate that. And I did say that I would take any questions. So optionally, if anyone is able to stay on the line, you're very welcome to stay on for that. I did have here's one question, a very, very interesting one, which has come in, and that is, as a CEO, how do I get time for all of this? That is a question, a very interesting question. So in thinking about the 6 key functions of a CEO, This is a simplistic example, but if we think about this from the perspective when I was first a manager and given accountability for a rather large division at a rather young age for the work of that division, I spent the first 6 months of my career there really resenting the amount of time that I had to spend in meetings because I felt it was quotation marks taking me away from my real work. And then I had the insight. It was actually quite startling to me, and that in my role as a manager, meetings was in fact the major part of my work. Of course, the question is making sure that they're effective and efficient meetings, but bringing my team together and working through with them in context, sitting down with each one of my individual managers, setting context for them, helping them to solve problems or overcome roadblocks that they had run into. And that just put such a different perception on my job that in fact I needed to create some value-added time for meeting with my people, both as a team as individuals. And I think the same is true of CEOs. These 6 key functions shouldn't be thought of as extra work. They should be in fact thought of as the work. So it's almost more around changing the tone of the conversation than it is creating a new conversation. So instead of talking with the CFO about the weekly and the monthly statements, it's more around how is the finance system positioned in terms of providing the absolute best value that it can to the organization. So it changes the nature of the felt accountability and the actually clear delegated accountability to that CFO around what they're accountable for. So I'm not saying that the CEO, excuse me, I'm not saying that the CEO needs to create a talent management system, for instance, in Function 4. Rather, the CEO needs to ensure that it is in place, needs to ensure that the head of HR is doing that work and bringing consulting with colleagues and bringing that forward and so on. So I'm not advocating that it's a lot of new work. I'm advocating that the CEO needs to be aware of the importance of each of these functions and focus in on them appropriately. So that was the question that we had. I don't have any others. I will close the webinar now. If anyone has any feedback for me, I do have a 3-question survey that will launch when we close the webinar. Please do take a couple of minutes to help me improve these webinars. I would really appreciate that. And if you have any other specific questions that you would like to ask of me, you can put it in any one of those boxes, and I would be happy to send you an email with an answer. Or if you'd like to chat with me about how some of these concepts might apply in your situation, please email me as well, and we'll set up a call. I always offer a free 1-hour consultation with senior executives, because I just love talking about these things, learning more about you and your situation, and seeing if there are things that we can do together. So thank you very much again. Best for the rest of the day to all of you, and hope that you're able to log in again in 2 weeks for our next webinar. Thank you very much. Bye.
Hi, I'm Dwight Mahalitz, President of Effective Managers. Thank you so much for downloading the webinar. I hope that you enjoyed it and will find it useful. Feel free to check out other parts of the website for interesting downloads. Most are free, some are at a nominal charge, but I'm sure you'll find lots of interesting tools there and things that can help you be more effective. And in fact, that's what my job is. My job is to help you, help your organization be higher performing. The bottom line is that I want to start where you are, understand your problem, and provide services that can help you solve that problem and implement a solution as quickly and as effectively and as efficiently as possible. Give me a call, drop me an email. I'd love to hear from you, talk about your situation, and see if there's anything that we can do together. Thank you.